I didn't realize how much sacrifice one would have to make when trying to build a company.
Meet Benjamin Fernandes, the Tanzanian entrepreneur behind Nala Money, the East African tech giant taking the world by storm. From graduating as the youngest in his class at Stanford Business School to raising millions in funds, Benjamin's achievements are nothing short of extraordinary, but his journey to success, far from easy. Let's dive into his story.
Do you think that you'd probably be treated a bit different if you were not Indian?
You know, I've said this before, but I'm only Tanzanian when I win an award. I'm only Tanzanian when Nala does well. I'm only Tanzanian when Nala raised $40 million. Otherwise, I'm Indian, I'm not African, and all these things people say about me constantly, it's not easy to read.
How does that make you feel?
I care about Tanzania's tech ecosystem growing, and I want to see other tech entrepreneurs do better than me. I should not be the example that people look at. There should be 5 other examples bigger than me as a company. I've missed weddings, birthdays, funerals, family reunions, activities while trying to build this company. Those are things that I look back and I'll never get to experience again. I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard.
Hi neighbors, welcome back to Stories Next Door. I'm your host JEICY Joyce. Today I am extremely happy. And the reason why I'm happy is because I have a fellow Tanzanian in the podcast. It's the first time I have a Tanzanian in the podcast. So we're going to have the best conversation. You know, us Tanzanian people, we love to have a good time. And he's also my close friend. So he's here to help me close season 1. He is a Tanzanian entrepreneur. He is the founder and CEO of Nala. He started this company at 24. He was the youngest African in his MBA Stanford cohort, where he went in with full scholarship. We're going to have a conversation about that. He's graced international stages with potent speeches on fintech companies and the impact within Africa. He has rubbed shoulders with presidents, with world business tycoons. He has done it all. He has been featured on platforms such as CNN, BBC, and recently I saw him on Forbes, sharing his impact on fintech in Africa, flying the Tanzanian flag very proudly. Benji, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you. Asante.
You're welcome. So yesterday I was debating with myself about how we should run this conversation. Should we use Swahili? Should we use English? We're both from Tanzania, and the most patriotic thing to do would be to use Swahili. However, I know your story, and I feel that your story is the type of story that needs to be heard by so many people. So we're going to use English, but then Swanglish here and there. You know how we do it.
Do it.
So we first met 3 years ago. And ever since that, I've seen you grow both professionally and personally, growing your company. You now have offices in London, Canary Wharf. Okay. Best place to actually have office. You've grown your team to 100 and so people right now. You've raised funds, 40 million only this year, and there is more to come, I believe. So you have done a lot at such a young age. So I recommend you for that. If I was to ask your friends to describe you in 3 words, what would they say? What would those words be?
Words, wow. Words is a tough one. I think phrases. I'll give you one phrase and I'll give you 2 words.
Okay.
So the first phrase that probably says like, one never knows what he'll get into next.
Okay.
Because there's always an aspect of some trouble here, there, and mischief. And yes, I think that one. I think the second one would be, I don't know, I think my friends would say like quite disciplined with work. I like to have fun, but when it comes to work, it's guys, like leave me alone. And I think it also becomes hard to keep a lot of the social relationships up. And I think the third one would be ambitious. Like every time I say I'm going to do this, people are like, dude, no. And just just hearing from my friends. But yeah, I think those three would probably be.
Now
the
you're
three.
always aiming for the stars. You're definitely ambitious.
Well, just trying to.
No, but I know you're so humble. One thing that you did not say is you're an influencer. Okay? So for those who do not know, Benji has just short of, is it 1 million followers? 500,000 followers on Instagram? So people do recognize you, and especially on the continent. So they know your accolades, they know what you achieved, they know what you're all about. But someone might sit and say, the only reason you are in this position right now is because you went to Harvard and you went to Stanford. So just take me slightly back on your personal journey. Were you an A student? How did you even end up getting a scholarship to Stanford? And is it all glitz and glamour as how you post online?
Yeah. So I mean, home is Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. That's where I grew up. And then my sister and I got a scholarship from K through 12 by a British family in Tanzania. And that's how we were attending the school. My sister did well in school. She was always top of the class. I, however, did not do well in school.
Shout out to Bernice, yes.
Shout out to Bernice. She was always raising the bar, telling me, like, come on, work harder, like, do better. And parent-teacher consultations were always awkward because they'd go then, like, your daughter's this, but your son this. But then they're the same house. Like, what's going on? I think that really troubled me as a child and also gave me a lot of motivation because I started to, I don't know, it was just really tough to constantly get told like you're not good enough, or you know. I remember phrases. I remember once I took my A-level mock exams and in front of the whole class, the teacher came up and said, "Hey Benji, at least try to get a D."
Oh, in front of the class.
In front of the whole class. And I was like 16 or 17 years old. It really affected me. And I was like, do you know what? One day I want to prove all of these people wrong, and gave me a lot of motivation. So when I was graduating, you can probably share my report card, but I actually got two U's, 1 E, and 1 C for my final grades for my A-levels. And I was told to repeat school. And I was like, no, I'm not going to repeat school. I need to get out of here as soon as possible. Now, it was embarrassing because a lot of my classmates had got scholarships and opportunities abroad and were going to university in the UK and, you know, and all the US and so on. And I was there and I was getting told to repeat 11th and 12th grade.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I can't do that. And I was embarrassed. I was like my classmates are going forward and I'm like taking 2 years back.
Yeah, there is a sense of shame that comes with that. But I think also people out there have to understand that I interviewed someone recently and they said that they were not good at school as well, but look at them now. So there's more to life than just grades at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, for sure. But, you know, obviously at that time is how you're assessed as a
True,
student. That's
true.
like, you know, and especially when you're told in public, it's, hey, at least try to get a D. That, you know, burnt me. And that like gave me, I'm like, okay, cool. So then my sister was doing university in the States, and then I applied to the same universities. I applied to 4 universities, got rejected by all 4. The one my sister was at, in it, they were like, hey, we're not sure. And I asked Ken Fafler, was the director of admissions, to give me a second chance. And he's like, cool, we'll give you a 3-month probation period. If you do well, you stay. You don't do well, you're returning home. And I remember telling my dad I got 3-month probation period. My dad said, you 3 months, I give you 1 month. I was like, if you don't do well in 1 month, I'm sending you to a farm in the village in Tanzania and you're going to live there. I was like, okay. So I went to America for the first time. I was 17 years old. And I used to pray this prayer that I used to pray in Tanzania all the time was, dear God, make me the head, not the tail, make me first, not last. But in Tanzania, I was last. And when I got to America, I knew I had this 3-month probation period. So I knew I had to work really hard. But I knew I would also need to incorporate my faith and discipline into my work in order for me to do well. So I'd pray every morning, dear God, I believe I can be the head, not the tail. I believe I can be first, not last. I'd show up to class. I was like the only African student in most of my classes. And I'd look around and I was like, am I not smart enough? Because these are all the things in my head. I was like, am I not smart enough? Am I not capable enough? Am I not good enough to be here? And I had this huge imposter syndrome because everybody there was there by merit and by performance and not by like me who's there on a probation period. So I knew I had to work really hard. And so I'd go to tutoring sessions where the teachers like holds office hours, and nobody used to go. I used to just go myself. And I used to try to pay as much attention as I could just in order to get better. And then after a while, I got my grades after the first semester, and I got straight A's.
Wow.
And
Through hard work.
there was a lot of discipline. There was a lot of like things I wasn't going to. Like, your first year of university, like, Benji, come to this party and that event and this event.
Oh gosh, yeah. First year of university was a vibe.
And you're like, yo, first time living away from family, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah. And I would say no. And I knew, because I knew within 3 months if I didn't do well, I was out. So this idea of discipline and being disciplined with like projects and things I needed to work on came from knowing that I wouldn't be there after 3 months if I didn't do it. So, after 3 months, I remember getting my grades. I made the dean's list and the honor society at school. And I called my dad. I was like, hey, guess what? My dad's like, yeah, I've been waiting for you. You're coming back. And, you've met my dad, so
Yes.
how he is. And I was like, no, I actually got straight A's. He didn't even believe me.
know,
The school, that to like prove to him. So,
Yeah.
so then they allowed me to stay another 3 months, then another 3 months. Then they finally let me off probation. After 4 years, I graduated top of my class. And one of my professors came up to me and said, hey, Benji, like, I know you want to go back to Africa, but promise me one thing. I said, what? He's like, promise me you're going to get an MBA at Stanford and Harvard and nowhere else. And I just looked at him. I was like, man,
I know.
I don't even know what an
So
MBA
that's
is.
the last thing you think about.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what an MBA is. And so he's like, go home and Google it. I was like, okay. And he said, just remember those two schools and nowhere else. And I was like, look, I don't know a single person who's done their MBA at these schools. Like, it's out of my league. I was 20 years old. I was like really young. And he's like, no, just go and apply. I was like, okay, cool. So I went back to Dar. I was working in Tanzania. I finished undergrad. I started undergrad when I was 17, so I finished pretty young. And I was working, and then that's how I got involved in TV. I used to be a TV host in East Africa. Then I applied to business school, which is Stanford and Harvard. I remember the first time, so I applied. Obviously, you have to take this GMAT exam. And so for 3 months in a row, I'd wake up at 4:30, study from 5 to 7 a.m., go to work, get to work by 8:30 a.m., be at work from 8:30 to 5:30 p.m., leave work, get home by 6:30, study from 7 to 9 p.m., have dinner, shower, go to bed. I'd try to get to bed by 10. And I did that every day for 3 months. And then on the weekends, on Saturdays, I was just doing practice exams. Sundays, I'd go to church, I'd come home, I'd do practice exams. And I did this for 3 months. And after 3 months, I remember it was December 10th, 2014. I applied to Stanford Harvard. I get a phone call saying, hi, is this Benjamin Fernandes? I was like, yeah. He's like, hi, this is Derek Bolton, Director of Admissions at Stanford. Do you have a few minutes to chat? I was like, yes. He's like, well, first of all, I'd like to let you know we've accepted you to Stanford Business School.
Gosh, how was the emotion when you received that phone call?
I froze. I couldn't even say thanks. I was just holding the phone. And I sat there, and I remember I was literally getting home, and I went out, the phone dropped, and the call cut. So it's like, this was maybe a minute and a half into the call drops. So then I go and tell my mom and my dad, hey, Mom and Dad, I just got into Stanford. My dad just says, who's paying? No congrats.
I know. That is such an African parent thing to say.
No congrats, nothing. And, JC, what actually happened right when I graduated, before I applied, I'd gone to church, and I went there and I said, God, if this is your will, it's your bill. And I emptied my entire bank account as a seed at church. And I said, God, this is my seed for my education. K through 12 was sponsored. Undergrad was sponsored. Now for my master's, for me, I felt like I needed to make a commitment with my faith for what this meant to me. So I emptied my bank account. I said, God, this is my seed. It was June. It was the World Cup 2014. I remember very clearly. And December 10th, 2014, I got this phone call. First call dropped. I tell my parents I got in. Who's paying? Okay, cool. I go back to my room. I sit on my bed and I said, God, remember that seed. And I prayed. I was like, God. Anyway, so I just waited by my phone. 20 minutes later, the call comes in again, +650 number, which is the Bay Area, California. I pick up. He's like, hi, sorry, we got cut off. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to let you know was we've decided that you're going to be one of the 8 full scholarship recipients for the Africa MBA Fellowship this year at Stanford Graduate School of Business. It's over a $200,000 scholarship.
Look at God. Do you know the reason why you were among the 8 who got that scholarship?
I'm not sure, but it's a very competitive school to get into. And I don't know how many people apply nowadays, like 17,000, 20,000 people apply for 400 positions. And for this 400, they only give it to 8 African students. So,
And you were the youngest of
yeah,
that.
yeah. So yeah, I got that when I was 21, I think. Yeah. So I, when I remember receiving that phone call saying you got this full scholarship at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and I just froze and I started crying, and I was like, wow, just 4 years ago I was getting yelled at for just trying to get a D, and was teased and trolled in school by not being a good student, and here I am going to the #1 business school in the world on a full scholarship. So that's how that happened. It wasn't overnight, whatever.
You had to work hard for it, because what I'm hearing is you worked hard for it, but you also have strong backing when it comes to your faith.
Yeah.
So that really helped you a lot to stay grounded. So the first time I heard about Benjamin Fernandes was, I think it was 2017 or 2018.
17.
And your name and your image was plastered all over social media, Tanzania social media, that is news agencies, this Tanzanian who declined a job offer at Microsoft with this huge paycheck that came with it, right? So why did you decline that job? But also, I know you went on to start your company from that. So what inspired you starting Nala? Did you see a gap in the market that needed to be solved?
The way I think about this is, everybody says life is short, but life is actually the longest thing you'll ever do here on earth. And I think knowing you are going to die is something that's really powerful, and it's something that I think everybody should constantly reflect on, because it affects the decisions you make on a daily basis, and affects how to use your time and what do you want to be remembered for, what do you want to commit your time and efforts to doing. And I think many people do jobs that they hate and things that they don't like doing. And there's too many people stuck in that category. And it's not easy, because sometimes you don't have choice.
Yes.
And choice is a privilege. I recognize that. And I think people go to graduate school or do masters for a few things. I think it's actually boiled down to 3 things. One, it's to accelerate in that same career they're in. So like, let's say you work in consulting and you're an analyst, you want to become a partner in consulting, or like you work in banking and you want to become a partner at the firm. So it's the same industry advancement. The second reason is to pivot into another industry. So like, let's say you worked in media and now you want to get into healthcare. So pivoting into that industry and using the master's program as a way to do it. And the third thing is to explore. Let's say you worked in healthcare as a doctor. Now you want to get into become a lawyer, or whatever you want to do, and so, but you also want to explore fintech, but you also want to explore, logistics tech, or, educational technology, or anything like that. So I was definitely in category 2, where I was working in media and I wanted to get out of media. And I was always passionate about payments. I was always curious about how money movement happens. And I'd always complain. Like, why is this expensive in Tanzania? Why does it have to be this way? And I'd complain so much at school that my friends would always tell me, like, why don't you go and start something and do something about it instead of just talking about it? And I think when you're surrounded by people that challenge you that way, it really affects how you show up. When every day you complain about something and like, well, JC, what are you doing about it? Stop complaining. Go do something about it.
Yeah, go do something about it.
And you were now surrounded constantly for 2 years by people like that who challenged me in an insane way. It made me think it was potentially possible that I could do something about it. Now, I had all the excuses. I said, I'm too young. Yeah, but you're 21. Okay. The average in the program is 29. So I'm like, oh, all my classmates have 5 to 7 years of experience. I'm 1 year experience. I've never built a company. I've never managed all these people significantly older than me. I've never raised money before. I don't have money to start this company. I gave myself all these excuses. And then I remember speaking to an alum, who came, and, if you want to ever start a company, I think you should surround yourself with people who started companies, because the level of discipline and that it takes in order for you to get there. So I remember sitting in class and this alum came, and the thing I loved about Stanford is they would always bring alums to come to talk to students, alums of failed companies and successful companies. And with the failed companies and successful companies, both would be like, hey, JC, I sat in that chair 4 years ago, and this is what I'm doing now. Hey, I sat in that chair 6 years ago, and my company just went public. And you'd hear these stories constantly. And what it would show you was that it was potentially possible. Because that same person sat in your chair. Yes, you have different backgrounds. Yes, you have different family backgrounds. Some of them come from extremely wealthy families. I don't. I'm not at that scale for what you're comparing yourself to with students at Stanford. Look, I had kids who were the wealthiest family in their country, their whole country's children in school with you. So the level privilege is always relative. Everybody assumes like, for somebody who grows up in rural Tanzania, being rich is moving to like Mwanza. For somebody in Mwanza, being rich is moving to Dar es Salaam. For somebody in Dar es Salaam, being rich is getting a job at, a certain type of organization. For somebody at that organization, it's like, I want to move to Nairobi to be at the headquarters of that organization. For somebody in Nairobi, I want to move to London. So comparison is the thief of joy, but privilege is also very relative, because for some people, like for me, I felt privileged at Stanford, but if I compared myself to my classmates and that as a baseline, I was probably on the lowest end by far. There was not even a comparison bar to look at. So that's why I thought I could never start a company. And I remember speaking to an alum, and I gave him all these excuses. It was actually Fred Swaniker, the founder of Africa Leadership Academy. And he just looked at me and he's like, "You're a joke." I said, "Why?" He's like, "How much money do you want to raise?" I said, "I don't know, maybe $20,000. It's like, "You're a joke." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "If you can't raise $20,000 from your friends right now, you're not serious about what you're trying to build." And I was like, "But Fred, like, I don't want to go ask my friends for money, because if I do, and if the business doesn't work out, it's going to damage the relationship." He's like, "Then you're not serious." And he's like, "Go ask this friend for $200, that friend for $500, this friend for $200, this friend for $1,000. And for me, it seemed like work. And he's like, "Don't be lazy."
You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You want to succeed.
And he's like, this is what entrepreneurship is. You don't be lazy. He's like, be ambitious, be disciplined about what your work and what you're trying to accomplish. And that conversation pushed me. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could try this. Maybe I could actually do this. So when I was leaving Stanford, I had a bunch of job offers, including the one you described. And I knew if I took them, I'd get stuck.
Okay.
And I'd be in this place of like, leaving is so hard because you get comfortable.
Yeah, you do. You get, nice paycheck every month.
There's this thing called golden handcuffs. It's like, it's like super comfortable, and then you get paid super well. And I was like, I'm the youngest I ever will be today. I can take the most risk I can right now. And if it doesn't work out, I'm going to try. And I know I'll figure out a way to get a nice paying job again. I know I'll hustle enough to figure it out. And that's what pushed me to start Nala, was knowing that I didn't have the perfect idea. I didn't have the perfect plan. I didn't have the perfect business plan, or the idea that it was in 2017 is nothing that we do today. Not literally nothing that we do today. And yeah, that just getting started and making that decision on your own. I would say if somebody wants to start a business, the most important thing is to fall in love with the problem. That's it. Nothing else matters. The idea will change. The product will change. It will evolve. The smarter you learn, but don't get caught up into the ideas and never start. Always just start.
So just like me, you are a million miles away from home, right? So has being an immigrant given you any unique opportunities or challenges through your journey as a founder?
Yeah, a lot. I never lived in the UK before. I think you'd come to one of my first events here, Nala events, and I'd come to the UK and I was trying to find people to use Nala. And we had maybe 50 customers.
Now the hustle was real. I saw it firsthand. The hustle was real. Mm-hmm.
I was carrying around like flyers myself, like the banners I was printing. I brought the banner from Tanzania because it was cheaper to print than the one here. And I was like staying at an Airbnb couch.
Yes.
Not even like a proper place, a couch initially. And I remember one of the Airbnbs I stayed, it was like all these students. And it was like 4 rooms and there was one bathroom shared with 4 rooms who were like these students in university. And I just looked, I was like, man, this is what it's come down to.
Yeah. No, but you know what you were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You saw the vision.
Yeah. It was reflecting on it, like thinking what I was doing then now
Yeah.
is crazy.
It is crazy.
But I was literally carrying this stuff. I was like trying to organize the event. I was like trying to show up early. People didn't come. I was like texting all the customers myself, like, hey, reminder, like we're gonna have a sold out event tomorrow night.
Yes.
There was like only 4 people confirmed. And I was like hoping, like maybe this will like get people to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And I go and like try to hustle to figure out, okay, how do I set up this business? We had no office, we had no team members in the UK. It was just like me trying to find customers. And, growing from that to getting to 500,000 customers today, three years later is something that I couldn't have imagined. I couldn't have thought about for how that came about. But being an immigrant in the UK or being an immigrant anywhere is hard. Being an immigrant while trying to start a company feels even harder, especially in a place where you don't have any family. And I would come here, I was alone. I didn't have a best friend that I grew up with that was living in England. I didn't have a high school classmate. I didn't have a friend I went to university with that was sitting here.
But you know what you did really well? I think you built a community that supported you. Although you did not have, firsthand anyone here, you did try very hard to build a community that supported you.
Yeah. No, I think that was where I knew we had to. We had no choice, right? Like JEICY came to like almost all my events the first time, and I was like,
yeah, we turned up.
Just come there and support,
Yeah.
even though like she maybe even didn't know anybody. She'd be there like,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, you also got to meet this person and that person. And she'd connect me with some folks. And that's how that all started. Like Nancy, who you interviewed on this podcast
Yes.
a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
I met her on Clubhouse.
Oh,
And she was
wow.
one of my first customers in the UK.
Yeah, she was,
I think she's like first 5 customers who ever test out Nala, studying from the UK to Kenya. And now you and Nancy are good friends,
Yes.
and so like all that community started by trying to just meet people and like build this company. But yeah, it's definitely not easy being far away from family and loved ones.
So on that topic of being far away from home, how do you cope with that, being far away from your family?
Being far away from family is really hard. I've missed weddings, birthdays, funerals, family reunions, activities while trying to build this company. And those are things that I look back and I'll never get to experience again. And when I talk to my friends, they're like, Benji, you weren't here when this happened.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That, I didn't realize how much sacrifice one would have to make when trying to build a company. I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. And most people, the problems we face on a daily basis, I sometimes shy away from talking about them because I know how stressful they are. Like this morning, I woke up, 2 of our payment partners are down, payments are stuck. It's not even our fault as a business. Customers are angry. People are calling our customer support, calling me personally. I wake up to maybe 100 abusive phone messages to my own personal cell phone. And for something that's not even your fault. But you wake up, you're a human being. You care. You love this company. It's like your baby. You want to see it succeed. And you see something that's not even in your control happen. And that was this morning. It's hard. And then you're like, oh, can you come to my birthday party? And you're like, do you take care of the customers or do you go to this birthday party and enjoy yourself? And those are the sacrifices you're constantly asked to make and constantly put up with. And it's not easy, JC. It really isn't. I have so much empathy for anybody starting a company, whether you have 1 employee, whether you have 0 employees, whether you have 500 employees. Starting anything, I have so much respect and empathy now.
It is a very lonely journey too.
Extremely lonely because not many people understand. And even sometimes with friends, it's so hard for me to even share the things that I'm going through because the relatability of it is not there for most of my friends. And
do you have a life coach?
I do have a few founder coaches that I speak to on a monthly basis just to like get advice. And speaking to them is actually probably really valuable because they're like, oh, Benji, this? Yeah, we've experienced this, times 10, So it normalizes those things. But there's a level of sacrifice, I think, on the personal side of building a company especially as an immigrant, especially being 11,000 miles away from your parents. That is difficult and is very hard to replicate or be supportive. And, I see my parents maybe once, maybe twice a year now. They're getting older. I think about, okay, what am I doing for them? These are the questions I ask myself. Like, cool, I'm running around trying to build this company and setting it up. We work in 21 countries in Europe. We work in the US. We work in 11 countries in Africa today. We're launching India. We're launching Pakistan. We're launching Philippines this quarter. We're launching Canada in January. So all these things I'm working on as the business is expanding. And, it is a hard balance, and I do struggle with it. It's not easy.
Yeah, I can only imagine because, so I've been away from home for over a decade now. And one significant thing that happened is I lost my brother during COVID, where planes were grounded. But that week that he passed is the week that the planes started taking off. So I did have the opportunity to go home, so I did not miss that. But you saying that there's occasions that you miss, right? Is there any practices that you have in place to tackle those, that it doesn't happen? Or how's your diary? How's even your diary looking?
It's hard. Like, there's a few things I'm trying to do more. Some of my investors have been telling me to take more time off and encourage me, because I have, me.
Yeah.
You've known me for
even getting you on the podcast was a struggle, okay?
JC knows on a Saturday I'm in the office. But, I think I've been trying to do a few more things with, like, whether it's on my birthday, just try to get a few people together and like go somewhere. And so I've been trying to do that more, whether it's once a year. One of the things I'm trying to do maybe from next year onwards is like do at least one family holiday with my parents, just to like,
that's very
they're getting older, and I need to think about, okay, I'm not sure how long I have them, and being so far away every year, it's traveling also becomes harder for them, the older they get. So I try to think about those things and how I can add them into my diary and manage that out. But it is hard, because one friend will tell me like, hey, you missed my wedding. And that one hurts.
Yeah, it does. Can imagine.
That one hurts. I remember there was one recently I was invited to the Buckingham Palace. And that was the same day as like an important event for one of my friends. And I couldn't do both.
Yeah. Sometimes you wish you could be in both places at once, but it's not possible.
Yeah, it was really hard, because it was the first time I was getting invited there. I hadn't been invited there before, and it was about something, and they're trying to do more with Africa, and I was responsible for a lot. And the person who invited me, anyway, so it was hard. It was a privilege. I recognize it, but I think that's always hard, and I don't have the perfect formula, and a lot of my friends that I talk to started companies don't either.
Yeah, true. No, I think it's all about just working it out as you go, and as your close friends, they see you grow. So, we understand.
Jason's been so patient with me.
We understand.
She's like, Benji, are you going to show up? And I'm like,
We totally get it. So back to Nala.
Yeah.
So companies are always responsible for serving the communities that they operate, right? So how does Nala's mission align to the needs of the African communities?
So at Nala, our goal is to build payments for the next billion. And billion is not just Africa, but it's emerging markets. It's the Asia, it's the Latin America, it's Africa. It's regions that are frankly overlooked globally and at scale. And I see our responsibility being beyond 100 years. So for example, I tell the team, like, we should look at Nala like Coca-Cola. 100 years from today, did we build payment rails that enabled the global world to trade with Africa? Do we enable new sources of revenue? Do we increase revenue on FX losses that most businesses would face anyway on the continent? Did we help reduce that directly through software and technology? Did all the other businesses build on top of the infrastructure and rails that we built? And that's how I think about it. I'll give you an example. So with Nala, there's two businesses. We have our consumer business, which is basically trying to build TransferWise, but for emerging markets. And we have our infrastructure business, which is called Rafiki. And why we're even building Rafiki is when we were building Nala, we needed to build FX, treasury management, and payout reliability, because reliability in Africa for payouts is really, really bad. And as we were doing that, I realized so many other companies, global companies that try to operate in Africa, have the same problem, doing treasury and payouts into different African markets. So you know what? There's a huge opportunity for us. For example, think about the creator economy today in Africa that can't get paid on M-Pesa in Kenya or Tanzania or MTN, in Uganda or whichever country, right? Who's going to enable Instagram or TikTok to pay influencers directly to their mobile money wallets in these markets? When do we see that new creator economy start to grow in Africa, which is often overlooked, or it's like, oh, maybe there's no money there, we'll do it later. Who's going to be the one disbursement API that connects global businesses to like disperse and create new businesses and opportunities for people in Africa? So that's why we built Rafiki. Is there's a huge opportunity for global commerce business, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Uber, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, but also global trading businesses. So DHL is trying to repatriate funds from Kenya to Germany. Who's going to enable that? We already operate in Germany as a business. Can we support the cross-border payments there? So Rafiki is kind of like dLocal, but for Africa. dLocal is a global payments business in Latin America. And Nala is trying to build TransferWise, but for emerging markets. So Africa, Asia, this is a big push for us. So the ways that we try to support the communities, we do a lot of community-based events. We try to sponsor a few things here and there where we can, where it makes sense for us as a business. We try to be involved in the community. So whether it's supporting like an orphanage donation or so on. We've done a lot of that at Nala, where we try to help out here and there. It's not easy. Some of our competition have a lot larger pockets. And so we try to balance out where we can and where we can support, and where we can't, we bow out respectfully.
Yeah. So you spoke about Nala, and now you have Rafiki. You've raised $40 million this year. How does someone raise $40 million? Because I know someone sitting, listening to you right now is like, okay, we said you've raised this much, you're doing this much, and now you're talking about Rafiki. It's another product which needs, you to raise more money. How do you approach funding in early stages, that is?
Early stages, it's what I said earlier. It's if you can't get your friends to bet on you, you're not serious. And I really think we should do that more. Look, in our culture, we're so used to donating for weddings, for funerals.
For funerals, yes.
And why don't we donate when somebody starts a business? It's a joke that we don't do that. Maybe, what is it? Jealousy? Is it selfish? I don't know what it is.
I think the Chagas in Tanzania do this a lot, though. They help each other a lot.
But why don't other communities do it, right? Why doesn't everybody do that? Why isn't that a practice that's common? Like, okay, cool, this month, we're going to put into JEICY's business. We're each going to give $1,000. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, cool. She tried her best. But you should only invest. And it's not a donation. Those are two very different things. It's an investment.
It's an investment, yeah.
So you should only invest if you're happy to lose 100% of that money. So every single person that gave me money, I told them, before you wire me, even if it's $500, are you 100% okay with never seeing this money again? And if you see it, we just got blessed. And if the answer is no, I don't let them wire money to me. If it's meaningful money, if it's like, hey, this is my entire paycheck for this month, I'm going to give it to you, Benji, because I want to invest in Nala, I say no. I say, give me what you don't mind losing. And if that is okay, cool. And it's not charity. They're investing in Nala. So I think at early stages, and the mistake that most people think is they think you need a lot of money at the early stage. I always tell people, what's the easiest, fastest, simplest, cheapest way to test out if there's a need there and if people are willing to pay for the need? That's the most important question that most people get caught up in. Some people want to, I meet a lot of people here like, oh, I want to start a company, but I don't have $1 million. I didn't have $1 million either.
Yes.
I didn't start with $1 million given to me. This was, JC, people see $40 million now. Like, oh, wow, he just got $40 million. This is 8 years of working.
True.
8 years of grinding, like 80 to 100-hour weeks to get to raising $40 million. You're like, oh, whatever. Cool. Say what you want. Don't look at the highlight reel and don't assume that the work behind the scenes didn't happen.
Yeah, I think people don't know that. As you said, what you don't know, you think it's easy, Go out there and raise 10 million, but 40 million, but that's 7-8 years of work.
Yeah. But at the same time, I didn't know that either. How did I learn? Remember what I said earlier, like if you want to build a company, you got to surround yourself with other entrepreneurs. There's no choice. You have to. That's how you're going to learn fastest. You're going to avoid mistakes. the longer you take to avoid mistakes, is the cheaper your school fees is going to be. Because every single time we make mistakes, even today at Nala, we make mistakes constantly. How we're building the company, how we're building the team. You go from 7 people to 120 people in 18 months. Everything in the company is going to break. Every function that you built is going to break. There's no, oh, let's see if it breaks. No, it's going to break. Now, have I managed 100 people in my life before? Absolutely not. Have I managed 5 people in my life? Absolutely. Have I managed 1 person in my life? Absolutely not. This is my first time doing this myself. I'm trying to figure it out as I'm going. I show up to work. Everybody expects me to have it all figured out. I don't, and the way I learn is from other people. But how did I meet those other people? Jonas, the co-founder of Monzo here in the UK, most people know Monzo, is an investor in Nala. How did I meet him? I sent him a cold email. I watched almost every YouTube video of his and Tom Blomfield's on YouTube. And in one of the videos, he shares his email. And I emailed him. I was like, hi, Jonas. My name is Benjamin. I'm from Tanzania. I love what you're building. I'm trying to build the Monzo, but for Africa. And I love your statement about this. I actually want to challenge you on this. I know you're super busy, but do you have 15 minutes to connect? I know this is a long shot, but hey, I can't win a race I haven't started. Sent it to him. He replied about an hour and a half later. We got on a call 2 weeks later. And he is this CTO and co-founder of a $5 billion business in England. I'm this person sitting in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Oh, you were?
I was in Dar.
Wow.
It was 2018 when I emailed him. And I'm emailing this guy, and he still responds to me. So who am I? That somebody of that caliber, somebody I look up to, somebody I find is like inspiration, somebody I could love to learn from, responding to me.
I think more people need to dare to do things like that, because what's the worst that could happen?
What is the worst thing that happened? Okay, it took me 20 minutes to write the email. Was that the worst thing? Like, cool. Instead of scrolling on Instagram for 20 minutes, that's a much higher ROI versus scrolling on Instagram for 20 minutes, right? So I think those sort of things, so now what I do every year is I have a list of like 10 to 15 tech founders that I want to meet. And I have my target list. These are the people I want to meet this year. How will I meet them? And this year, out of my list of 10, I've met 8 of them so far. And I'll hit the last 2 before the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's possible, They always talk about having like a vision board of where you want to be, what you want to do, so that it's ingrained within you,
I think that's really powerful. I think people should have 6 types of goals every single year, and that they review every month. And the 6 goals are personal goals. So like these are things, that you personally want to achieve. Professional goals, so things to do with work, whether it's you want a promotion, whether you want to do something. There's financial goals. So like, okay, how are you investing your money? Like, what are you putting your money into? Whether you're, what you're doing with your money, like how you're spending your money. There's health goals. So like if you're working out, if, you want to hit a certain milestone. There's spiritual goals, which is with your faith, to each their own, obviously. And the 6th one is relationship goals. It's family, it's friends, it's socially and I think within each one of these 6 categories, people should identify what they want to accomplish by the end of the year, and every month do a review. How am I doing? And keep themselves accountable that way, because if they don't, it's going to be the end of the year and be like, oh man, I didn't even hit the goals I wanted to hit. But discipline got to come from yourself. There is nobody else who's going to teach you discipline, and it's self-driven. So that's what I think. That's how I assess myself, and I assess how I'm doing is reviewing my 6 categorical goals every single month.
I read this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he talks about the same thing that you're talking about right now, having discipline, but he also talked about having an accountability partner. Do you have an accountability partner?
Not directly. I mean, I do have... my board is my accountability partner. So like, hey, we're going to hit this revenue. Okay, what happened? Why didn't we hit this revenue, right? So I think naturally, professionally, that's a huge accountability partner. My CEO and CTO, Nico, they're huge accountability partners to me. They keep me in check. Like, hey, we need to do this. We need to make sure this is getting done. Okay, cool. It's going to take extra hours. Okay, figure it out. And then I have founder friends who are accountability partners. Like, hey, Benji, you said you're going to be here by this revenue, by this date. What happened? Why aren't you there? So I think it's important, but I don't think people should use it as an excuse for not hitting their goals.
No, of course.
And I think the problem is most people will use it as an excuse. Oh, but Benji, I don't have an accountability. I'm like, so what? Like on my phone, literally, if you read my wallpaper, what does it say?
I can't read that.
Okay, it says, nobody cares, work harder.
Which is so true.
Like nobody cares.
No one cares. Yeah.
You know? So like, cool, good for you. Like no one cares.
Go on and do it then. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think time is your most important asset that you have as a human being every single day, and how you use your time you need to be accountable to yourself first. And if you can't be accountable to yourself, you can never start a company.
That is true. Yeah. So as a CEO, you have to make hard strategic decisions sometimes. What is the hardest decision that you've ever made as a CEO?
I think there's a lot of hard decisions we have to make even on a weekly basis, and expensive ones and very difficult ones. I think one of the hardest decisions I had to make was, every year I feel like there's one hard decision that was really tough that I had to make that either did well or cost us a lot of money. And ultimately, as a CEO, you're responsible for it. And if it goes well, maybe you'll hear one good job from a board meeting, maybe. If it doesn't go well, it's all your fault. From not just one person, but from everybody. I think one of the hardest ones I had to make was 2020. We were doing, Nala was a different business from 2017 to 2020/2021. So 2017, 18, 19, 20/2021. Imagine working on something for 4.5 years and building everything, putting all your energy into it, only to shut it down. So what most people don't know is we weren't a cross-border payments company till 2022. We were doing domestic payments in Tanzania and Uganda. It was a very different business. And
was it similar to M-Pesa?
Yeah, it was like we'd aggregate wallets. That was the difference. So we'd aggregate wallets like on top of M-Pesa, Airtel Money, Tigo Pesa, and people would download this app. They could see all their accounts in one and transact that way. And we didn't have product market fit. We had no retention. And ultimately, as the CEO of the business, I had to make the call that we're pivoting the company, which meant layoffs, which meant change of direction, which meant people who joined the company didn't believe in the new product. Even though the vision stayed the same, the product was different. So people were like, okay, fine, I'm leaving. So we had people quit on me. We had employees who didn't see it. I took a pay cut. I didn't take a salary so that we could extend runway. And that was probably one of the hardest but the best decisions we made, because I had emailed our investors saying, hey, we're going to make this pivot to cross-border payments. JEICY, most of them didn't even reply. Some of them said, this is a big mistake. A bunch of them said, don't do this. World Remit is already a $5 billion business. Remitly is going public. TransferWise is going public. You will never be able to compete. I have emails that say this from people I respect in the industry who have been investing in, imagine somebody who's been investing in fintech for 15 years telling you you'll never be able to compete. And you're like, wow, that person's really smart. Should I listen? Yeah. And I just had to make the call, like, do you know what? I think we can figure this out. And I'd never lived in England before. And we're launching the UK to Kenya. I'd never lived in Kenya either. And I don't know many Kenyans. So I'm like trying to, like, that's how I met Nancy, was sitting on Clubhouse.
Well, the Kenyans have claimed you now.
Yeah, the Kenyans have claimed me. I have like a couple of Kenyan names. Kamau is one of them. Kibet is the other one. But, you know, making that decision led from 2022, led to us being able to figure out finding customers there, and then growing from 0 to 500,000 customers, from $0 million in revenue to $10 million in revenue in 1 year, and then become profitable this year. So the business in the last 20 months grew 52 times on the volume. User base grew from, I think, like 52 months ago, is probably like 1,000 customers to nearly 500,000 customers, over 500,000 customers today. The revenue grew 10x in the last 12 months, and we became profitable. So when we became profitable and cash flow positive, that's when the investors started coming. It wasn't because, oh yeah, Nala's this business. There's so many businesses to invest in. But if you show you can generate profit and while still solving something people need, then people are like, wow, this person's serious about what they're trying to build. It's not a charity. And a lot of tech companies aren't profitable and are very, very, very far from being profitable. And so that's how we were looking at and assessing ourselves. Like, can we become profitable? And what does this look like? And we had to make a lot of sacrifices and difficult decisions. Some of our competitors were expanding to all these new markets. We're doing all these giveaways. We're sponsoring everything. We couldn't afford to do that as much as I wanted to. I had friends here who, you know, would come up to me like, hey, Benji, can you sponsor this event? And I was like, we can't. You know, our competitors had raised a lot more money than we had. And so we being disciplined about those decisions, and those friends don't understand. They're like, oh, Benji's just being stingy, you know? And you hear this other side, but I'm thinking about long term, like how do we get to the next phase of the business? How do we raise this $40 million? How do we build payments for the next billion? We're only in Africa today. How do we get to Asia? What are the foundational steps we need to get in order to get there? And so those are a small glimpse, but of the many difficult decisions you have to consistently make as a CEO of the business.
So the investors who said that you would never make it, did they come back?
They did.
They did?
They did. Almost all of them came back. And the emails would be, hey, Benji, I've always believed in you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I don't know, it's a constant struggle because there's a huge power dynamic between investors and founders. Do you know what? Like, I have to be respectful to them.
True.
At the end of the day. Like, the investors I respect even more, the ones say, hey, Benji, I was looking at the business incorrectly 2 years ago. I'd like to sit down with you and understand your new approach is how you're building this business. Let's connect. I respect those people even more versus people who's just like, I've always believed it. I'm like, no, you didn't. That's not honest. So yeah, I mean, they do come back, but obviously we've not made it as a company. You know, this is huge. Every single fundraise doesn't mean you've made it. A fundraise doesn't mean you're successful. A fundraise means that you were able to raise capital to take you to the next milestone for the company. And one of my board members always tells me, he says, Benji, you don't celebrate a fundraise. Why? Because the chef doesn't celebrate getting the ingredients.
That is so true. Mm-hmm.
What are you building? What have you built? Are you generating something? Are you generating revenue? Are you profitable again? Have you built this business at scale? Those are all the next milestones that we have to face as a business. So I tell our team, don't act like we've made it. You know,
It's still a long road
There's a
ahead.
long journey ahead. You know, we've got to build payments for the next billion. We're just getting started. We're 1% built to where we are today.
1%. Wow.
So, like, think about where we need to go as a company.
You are no stranger to comments online, negative comments online, that is, especially from Tanzanians. I hate to say this, but especially from Tanzania, who sometimes question your Tanzanian identity because of your Indian heritage. How does that make you feel?
Not great. You know, I'm proudly Tanzanian. You've seen me at all my events. I carry my flag proudly. It's within the first sentence. When somebody meets me, I tell them I'm from Tanzania. And, you know, that's where home is. That's where my parents are. That's where I grew up. That's where a lot of people I care about live. And, you know, I've said this before, but I'm only Tanzanian when I win an award. I'm only Tanzanian when Nala does well. I'm only Tanzanian when Nala raised $40 million. Otherwise, I'm Indian. I'm not African. And all these things people say about me constantly, it's not easy to read. Sometimes I go and I see the stuff that's written about me on Twitter and I just, you know, it's hard to not take it personally. And so I try my best consistently to not take it personally. Sometimes a friend will text me a tweet like, hey, Benji, look what they're writing about you here, especially Tanzanians. And there's one side, okay, I can go engage with it, but then I'm feeding it. And there's another side of just like, do you want to leave it? Just focus on building this company and everything will play itself out. And that's what I end up doing. I was just focusing on that. But to be honest, I say it's not easy. And, you know, I hear the things that are said about me. People are like, oh, you know, this guy is related to Mohammed Dewji, who's like one of the Tanzanian billionaires. That's why he's able to raise
those comments. Yes.
Yeah, people are like, oh, this is Mohammed Dewji's son. I'm like, no,
No, you're not.
like, you know, or, you know, all the, it's actually sad. It's, you know, but I really try my best to not, it used to get to me a lot more, especially the insults. And I don't say it doesn't get to me today, but I try to not let it affect me.
So what keeps you grounded?
Emmanuel, actually.
Okay, yeah.
I said it to him. I'm like, yo.
So Emmanuel is Benjamin's best friend.
And, you know, speaking of Emmanuel, and Emmanuel, if you're watching this, I want you to know that I really care about you and a lot. It's not easy being Emmanuel to me in Tanzania. He goes to events, people like, you know, treat him a very different type of way because they know we're good friends in good ways and in bad ways. we go out to eat in Dar es Salaam, somebody will come up to say hi at the table. They don't even acknowledge him as a person. They'll be like, hey, Benji, want to talk to me? And then just ignore that he even exists as a person. Is he even there sitting down with me right next to me at the table?
Wow.
Constantly. And I imagine facing that, not for 1 year, but for 7 years, every single time we go out in Tanzania. It's probably not easy for him. His birthday is 1 day away from mine.
Yeah, away from yours, yeah.
And I remember I was hosting my 30th birthday party, and he was turning 30 as well the day before. And, you know, he has to sacrifice a lot, you know.
It's like the spotlight is on Benji.
Yeah. And sometimes if I go to something that he's organized, some people want to come and talk to me versus talk to him. And I feel guilty going. I don't want to even be there because I don't want to make people like, oh, I want to talk to Benji. But it's Emmanuel's thing. It's Emmanuel's event. I want to be there to support him. And, you know, I think that's hard. I think, you know, what he has to go through consistently every day. And so now when people write all this stuff on me, I like it's just
send it to each other.
We make it a joke and then it's and then we just leave it. But JC, I will tell you, it's one of the things that were painful when we raised that $40 million round is I really try to help push and build a Tanzanian tech ecosystem. I try my best. When I'm in Dar, I'll try to do an event. I'll try to meet tech founders and so on. And I think the challenge is in smaller markets, we tend to create an ecosystem versus an ecosystem. And the gatekeepers who run the tech community in Tanzania or like organize events, I'm in town, like I would love to help. I don't get invited to like share my learnings. I don't get invited to speak. I don't need to speak at any of those events. But if there's something I could do, maybe I've built a company that's scaled beyond Tanzania, that maybe I know one or two things that could help other founders. But those platforms aren't even given to me. The people who organize those things don't invite me, which is fine. And I think about, are we actually helping the ecosystem here?
Do you think that you would probably be treated a bit different if you were not Indian?
100%. 1,000%. The stuff I hear, that even I've seen people who run the ecosystem, they're like, oh, who you name Windy? Oh, he's Indian though. You know, oh, but he's Indian. And there's always a but. There's always, with Benji, there's always a clarification. Oh, lakini, huyu ni silver spoon. Lakini babake alipa kwenda Stanford. Or your father paid for you to go to Stanford. Actually, K through 12 was fully sponsored. Stanford was, undergrad was sponsored. Stanford was fully sponsored. So, babake, how? You know, and then like, oh, all that money from Nala is because of his dad. My dad and my mom, and I'm saying this here, have never given me a cent for Nala. Not a single cent. They've given me prayer, which is worth more than the money. But giving me cash to start this business has never happened. Mm-hmm. So all these assumptions online, I'm like, cool. People will say what they want to say. Let them say it. But I think the thing that's challenging is when you're trying to build and curate an ecosystem locally. I remember when we raised this $40 million, not a single government official in Tanzania called me. Not a single minister or member of parliament or central banker called me to say, good job. Like, you're representing us well. None of that. Then the US embassy in Tanzania writes about it and posts about it. As soon as that happens, and they wrote about it a couple days later. A few times, everyone's like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, Nala, good job. And I'm like, I don't need to hear the good job at all. But it was until the US embassy said something about it, then it became of valid importance to the country. And then now I see all this news about, oh yeah, Tanzania is a great destination to invest, blah, blah, blah. Like yesterday or day before yesterday, there was this whole, we made the front page of the Citizen newspaper. It said like, Tanzania for the first time is in the top 4 top destinations for startups, raising $43 million this last quarter. 40 of the million of that came from Nala. So, but even the picture didn't even show Nala. Even the tweet that they posted didn't even show Nala. And the first thing they say is like, oh yeah, Tanzania's created a great ecosystem to enable startup environment, blah, blah. Which, did you even interview me? Did you even ask me who runs the company? Versus people just speaking on my behalf. I think that's poor journalism. And I'd rather be frank here, and it's disappointing. And then all of a sudden we see members of parliament saying like, yeah, we've created an amazing environment for Tanzanian investment. Oh, have we? Have you guys even called me to ask me what I wish we did differently when we were building our company there? Have you guys called me to ask me why I put an office in Nairobi and not Dar es Salaam as a Tanzanian national? Oh, Nala's headquarters are in Nairobi. Are they? Have I, as Benjamin Fernandes, ever said Tanzania's headquarters is in Nairobi? Do we have a headquarters? Our largest customer base is the United States. So shouldn't US be our headquarters? So why is it this whole debate that people focus on something small and then attack everything about me because of it? Oh, look, he's not Tanzanian because he put his office in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Is that really the case? And the constant, I know we're talking a little bit more about Tanzania than I need to, but the constant attack there, right now, I almost don't care. To the point I'm like, okay, you know what? I just see some stuff written about me online. I'm like, cool. And people keep tagging me like, Benji, are you going to respond? Are you going to respond? You're going to respond. And I've left it. And, at this point, it is frustrating because the part of me that does care is because I care about Tanzania's tech ecosystem growing. And I want to see other tech entrepreneurs do better than me. I should not be the example that people look at. There should be 5 other examples bigger than me as a company. We're one of the largest, if not the largest, fintech company in East Africa as Nala. But I don't want us to be known for that. I want there to be other people, and that's the challenge you have in Tanzania, where you have politicians that young people strive to be like because they think it's a quick way to make money or power. You have football players. Remember, you had Samata, which was a big break for Tanzania in like, hey, look, being an international athlete is possible. You have Diamond Platinums, who's raising the bar for music. But what about tech entrepreneurship? Who do we have? We don't praise tech entrepreneurs. We don't prioritize tech entrepreneurs in Tanzania. Therefore, if we're not even doing this, will there ever be an ecosystem of tech entrepreneurship?
Do you think that, because the Kenyan tech industry is very vibrant compared to Tanzania, do you think there's a language barrier? That's the reason why?
Not the only reason. I think that's a very large reason. Very, very large reason. Because look, you do business when you trust somebody. Trust is built by being able to speak to them and communicate effectively. And English is the global language of trade. So when you can speak English, people trust you more. And I do think there's a huge language barrier. I don't think it's the only reason, but I think that is a very big reason for why we're behind in quite a few things.
Back to Nala, okay? Because we've explored a few things. So back to Nala, the fintech space in Africa is incredibly dynamic, right? There's a lot of players and competitors within the market. How does Nala differentiate itself from the rest of the competitors?
Yeah, so for our consumer product, where we enable immigrants in the US, UK, Europe. So right now we do Africa and Asia. Mm-hmm. So we do 11 countries in Africa. We do 3 countries in Asia soon to send money back home. We're differentiated from quite a few things. 1, our FX rates that we offer to customers, saving them money. 2, our speed of transfer and delivery. 3, our reliability on payouts. So some people can offer really good rates, but then reliability is not really there. Number 4 is how we manage your account directly. So you can do repeat transfers on Nala. You can do scheduled payments on Nala. Number 5, in countries like Kenya, we do direct bill payments. So where people say they want control of money. So they want to make sure that money is being sent for what it was said it was going to be used for. Yeah. So purpose-driven transfers. So for example, JC's uncle might say like, hey, send me money for school fees and it's $1,000. But the school fees is actually $800. They're pocketing the $200. Doing direct bill payments allows JC to sit in England and send directly to the school that money. And so giving control of money to the sender. So that's what we've been building directly. A few exciting things coming up next year, including cards.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Nala cards?
Yeah, Nala cards.
Is it going to be digital cards or
physical?
Physical cards?
Yeah, both actually. So that's a big project I'm working on exclusively. Yeah. It's not public yet. So
you heard it here first.
I mean, let's see. It's hard to build. Probably take like, I hope not this long, but 7 to 9 months to launch. But I hope we can launch it faster. But yeah, we're working on quite a few things like that.
Yeah. So there's a few things. So I remember when we first met and I loosely asked you where you see Nala in the next 5 years. You spoke about NASDAQ. So I'm curious to know, what's next for Nala in the next 5 years?
I want to be on NASDAQ as a public traded company in the United States. NASDAQ published this, obviously, congratulating us for our $40 million fundraise, but we're not listed yet. So I want us to be a listed company in a US stock exchange, and the dream would be NASDAQ. Now, if we can get there in 5 years, that'd be amazing. We've got a long way to go, revenue-wise, to get there. I'd like to get there in 5 years, because this job is a lot of work. So that would be amazing if we can. But even if we don't, that's still the dream. That's still the ambition. And it's not about listing a company publicly. It's about focusing on how we build payments for the next billion. Like, that's the question I want us to ask ourselves as a business. I don't want us to just enable people to send money home. One thing that I think about often, JC, is, sure, if we're helping immigrants send money back home, will that immigrant ever build generational wealth in the UK or in the US? Let's say somebody moved from KPMG Nairobi, got a job at KPMG New York, but is sending 30% of their income back home. They moved to New York when they're 40 years old. First of all, they have no credit history in America. So accessing a loan or trying to buy a house, you're starting from zero at the age of 40 in America. And then you're sending 30% of your income home every single month. So building generational wealth for yourself in the US, how do we enable you to get there? And these are the questions I asked the team, and I asked myself. I was like, guys, what can we do directly to support the immigrant beyond just remittance, where they don't have to send $1,000 home every month, where they can send 50, but we enable maybe, can they pay for health insurance for their family? Can we do a reoccurring payment for school fees every single month? So where we give the sender more control of the money, but also enable them to build generational wealth as an immigrant to the United States. These are the big focus areas for us as a business longer term. That's how I think about the consumer product, is migration's only increasing. Last year in the UK, you had 1.2 million people who moved in 2023. 250,000 came from India, largest immigrant population outside of Europe in the UK. 141,000 came from Nigeria. The top 5 are all emerging markets of migrants. China was 3rd, Pakistan 4th, Zimbabwe was 5th. 91,000 people. How do we enable these immigrants into the UK to build long-term generational wealth? That's how I think about Nala. And Nala is derived from a Swahili word that means a beautiful gift. And Nala is also the lioness in Lion King. Lionesses are actually the providers for the family because they actually hunt more than the male lions to provide for the kids. So that's how I think about Nala. That's how I look at, okay, we're on the consumer side, but on the Rafiki side, are we building infrastructure that enables global businesses to trade with Africa, therefore increasing local wealth in the local markets? That's how I look at both.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot of things to come. I want you to look at this camera. There's a lot of youth out there who look up to you, who aspire to be like you. So to young entrepreneurs in Africa who are looking to innovate, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give them?
No matter what you're trying to build, you have to fall in love with the problem. That's the most important thing. And until you understand the problem really, really well, you're going to get into this random box of random ideas and not focusing on how you can fix the problem in the simplest, fastest, easiest, and cheapest way to do it. So just start would be my advice.
Yeah, well, okay, just start, guys. You heard it here. So Benji, you're not the friend that, you'd call on a Saturday morning to grab a coffee because you're always busy. Huh? I remember when we first started talking, I used to complain, Benji, you're not replying to me on time. Then you set me down and you showed me your WhatsApp traffic and I was like, okay, it is well. So Benji, how do you balance or maintain a work-life balance? Do you even have a work-life balance?
I probably don't. I think it's also hard. I remember, I'll be in London for a week, and I think about it also from a work perspective. Okay, I'm here for a week. On one night, I'm trying to interview a candidate to convince them to join Nala, who works at a top company here. Another night, I'm interviewing another candidate. So like, okay, let's say out of 5 nights, 2 are already taken for work. The third night, because I've not been with the team, I'll maybe do like a small team social in the evening. And then I have maybe 1 night to myself. And then whether it's a late night in the office or something, that usually ends up happening. So it becomes difficult to, I think my saying no has increased massively, which is hard because I really struggle with this. And I know a lot of my friends are disappointed. The friends who do their best to understand are the ones I'm internally grateful for, because they're like, do you know what? I get it. And it's hard. Sometimes I get an essay sent to me on WhatsApp from a friend telling me about all the ways I didn't show up for them. Reading that is not easy. And there's no quick fix. You can't just like, oh yeah, let me just call them really quickly.
There isn't, yeah.
Because that's pent up frustration over time. And that's really hard, JC. The amount of times, you know this.
Yeah.
They're like, there's some random thing going on in London. You're like, hey, Benji, are you coming? I'm like, I'm still in the office. It's 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And do I want to be just in the office? Maybe my problem is I really like the work that we do, and I take it so personally when something goes bad, which is really probably bad.
No, but you're also very disciplined, Benji.
That's true. So I think that the work-life balance, does it exist today? Definitely, probably not. I don't know if there's such thing called work-life balance.
As an entrepreneur, I don't think so.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to build and how you're trying to build it. I think there's a certain level of anxiety that comes with ambition for what you have as a business and as a founder, and that you have to just naturally take in. I remember last year we were having a lawsuit, one of our first ones. And I stayed up in the office. I remember coming back home at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. just by myself. The next day I was there till 1 a.m. And in the office, I was expected to be 100%. Because when there's a lawsuit, there's also like defamation clauses, so you can't share all the details with everybody in the office and so on. But some people knew, some people didn't. And then you want to be transparent as a CEO, but then you can also get in trouble if you share too much. So I'm like, wow, this is, and then everybody expects you to be 100%. Being a CEO, you're the only person that was going to tell yourself, good job. Because think about it. Everybody reports to you. You're telling them good job. You're encouraging other people. Who's telling you good job? Who's saying, well done, Benji. Good job on what you did. You don't get thank yous. And that's not easy. Sometimes you crave to just hear, I'm proud of you. From just, even if it's one comment from like, not even at the office, but just a friend.
Yeah, from someone.
And yeah, I think in African culture, we don't say that enough.
We don't. We're not as expressive as we should be in the African culture.
Yeah, definitely not. And you build a generation of people who also aren't like that, because maybe your parents weren't like that to you.
That is very true. Have you ever been to therapy?
I have been to founder therapy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has it helped you in any way?
It has. It normalizes things. So when I was going through all these lawsuits, I remember talking to a founder, and he's a founder of one of the biggest fintech companies in America. I vented for like 10 minutes. I said, this happened, they did this, and they did that. And he just listened to me on the call on Zoom. And then he's like, are you done? I was like, yeah, so what do you think I should do? And he said, deal with it, but expect a lot more. And then he hung up on Zoom. So I was like, oh, was that an accident?
Yeah.
Did you mean to hang up?
Yeah. Because that's the reality of
this
things.
is like 7 p.m. here, UK time. And I remember going home and I couldn't sleep, JC. So I sent him a message on WhatsApp at like 2 a.m. UK time. I was like, hey, can you do a quick call? He's like, sure. So I called him. I was like, hey, what did you mean by this? Like, Benji, we have this happen to us every single year. He's like, it's not a you thing. It's a normal level for the stage of business where you're at. He's like, I'm surprised you only got your first lawsuit this year. He's like, expect a lot more. Just deal with it. Take the personal element of making it about you out of it. He's like, it's a normal part of running a business. So when somebody who I admire and I look up to normalizes it for you, it gives you a very different perspective of the problem. And now 1 year from today, that was like, the problem was this small. Like, it occupies this much headspace to me, but at the time it was everything.
Yeah.
You know?
It
And
was something new to you.
yeah, because I had never experienced something like that. So I think as you face these problems consistently, now they start to get normal. Like, remember when we get our first cease and desist letter from one of the largest telecoms in East Africa? I stayed up for 3 days, JC. They're like, oh, we're going to take you to court and blah, blah, blah. And I was 24 years old when this is happening. And I was like, yo, I was just trying to start a company.
Yeah.
You know?
How did this come?
I was like, out of nowhere. And the largest telecom sent me this thing. And I was like, wow. And what's funny is actually the CEO of that company, I actually met him last week at an event, and I showed him the letter, and we were both laughing about it. I was like, remember when you wrote me this thing? Like, when I was starting? He's like, yeah, like, I do remember those days. I remember you came in so scared to the meeting. But yeah, I think the problems, the company doesn't get easier. The incorrect conception that most people have is the bigger you get, it becomes easier for you as a founder. Actually, it becomes harder because the problems that happen at the company are at scale. Like, one treasury mistake a year ago would cost us $3,000. One treasury mistake today will cost me $60,000 in one day. So the cost of a mistake increases exponentially. The cost of the company not doing well increases exponentially. The cost of not making payroll, you're responsible for maybe 150 people on payroll, but actually 400 people's livelihoods. If you think about their wife, their kids, or the families that they're responsible for as well. So the pressure increases the bigger the business gets. And the cost of mistake is exponential. So it does get significantly harder. Even though you have more people at the company, doesn't mean that you're doing a lot more work. I actually think more people actually can be massively distracting because you have more levels of communication you have to carry a certain message down to. So that's how I look at it today. And I try to normalize these things based on other founder conversations that help me therapeutically manage these things myself.
Yeah. So on a lighter note, I know that the aunties in Tanzania will not forgive me if I don't ask you this question.
Oh no.
The queens will not forgive me. And our friendship WhatsApp group chat will not forgive me if I don't ask you this question. So Benji, when are you getting married?
When am I getting married? I didn't know this question would be asked in this podcast. I would have not showed up. When am I getting married? Wow. Sound like my mom.
No, they want to know.
They want to know.
Yeah.
Who's they?
Yeah, they. They are the ones that are listening. They want to know.
They want to know when I'm getting. Well, I'm married to Nala, right? So I'm loyal. Like, taking care of her. She's very physically demanding, mentally and emotionally abusive. So it's a toxic relationship right now.
Relationship.
I mean, yeah, it's just kind of rough. People call me Delulu, but I'm trying to make sure Nala's happy. Dating is hard. It's I would like to get married, obviously. I'd like to have kids. I'd like to have a family. I think I'm also probably quite picky in what I'm looking for. And I know my life and how I maybe don't have a great balance with how I work versus like personal life. And maybe I need to change a few things here and then. I recognize that. A few people have pointed it out, and I totally respect their point of view too. And yeah, look, I'd like to start, dating properly and explore what marriage could look like. So it is something.
Okay, so ladies, you heard it. The applications are open.
The applications are not.
I'm just playing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm just
But
playing.
no, it is something I'd like to do for sure. I just never felt like I needed to force it or rush it right now, and especially with what we needed to do as a business the last few years, I think it was the right call.
So when all is said and done, what legacy do you want to leave?
I want us to know that we've built payments for the next billion, and we've built rails that over 100 years from today still exist beyond us. Not less bigger than Benji. And I want to make sure that people come back and use our rails and build global businesses from it for what we've built, enabling the world to trade with Africa.
So Benji, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about fintech and about being an entrepreneur, being a founder. I've learned so much today. And I think I wouldn't be a grateful person if I did not say that. I know I spoke about there's millions of people that you inspire, and I am one of those people that you inspire. I remember when you first came to the UK and I saw your hustle, and I thought to myself, this guy is from Tanzania. We probably got the same beating from our parents growing up. We had the same food. We went to the same schools. If he can do it, I can also do it. So thank you so much for inspiring so many of us out there. And I know that sometimes you do not get the praise as you needed from Tanzanians, but there is Tanzanians out there who look up to you and say, yeah, he's doing great for the country. Okay. And one day that is something that is going to be written somewhere, you know, like I'm talking about 100 years from now, right? There was Benjamin Fernandes and this is what he did. Okay. Probably will have your statue somewhere there. You never know. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know that you're a man of faith. I'm also a Christian. So I pray that God continues to bless the work of your hands as he promised us in Deuteronomy, that he'll bless the work of our hands. But also I pray that you have wisdom and discernment, because the journey that you're in is a very lonely journey. And if you don't have that, you might actually perish. Okay, so thank you so much, Benji, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's very kind, and I'm proud of you.
Well
done on like putting this whole season together. Feel very privileged to be wrapping up the season with you,
Thank you.
It's been amazing to obviously watch you grow, and obviously thank you so much for being a very patient, supportive, and understanding friend to me.
No problem at all. Well, neighbors, there you have it. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, everything on the platform. Until next time, I'm your host, JEICY Joyce.
Guys, go and like and subscribe right now. Right now, hit that follow button.
Yes.
I don't know, is a subscribe button on Instagram too, but like if there is, go and subscribe.
Go subscribe.
Yeah, go subscribe on TikTok, everything. Yes.
Thank you, Benji.
Bye.